This is a good book, and if you play Heresy, you're going to want this book. The previous book, which was Exemplary Battles in the Age of Darkness, the one with Fulgrim transfigured on the cover, not such a good book. I didn't do a review of that one because a book's really got to grab me to make me want to do a review. And after reading through the Exemplary Battles in the Age of Darkness one, I was like, it's okay. I mean, the lore in it was good. The lore in this one is good. The lore in this one is excellent. The lore in the previous one is excellent. And if there are any lore aficionados out there, you're going to get it for the Beta-Garmon lore. It's concise. It's got maps. We like maps. But the previous one, unless you were playing Emperor's Children or Armor Entura, the Night Lords, there was some very specific unit types in it for some very specific chapters, legions in it. It was targeted at certain audiences, certain legionary players. And there was nothing in it that particularly grabbed me. Yes, there was loads of Emperor's Children in it, and I collected Emperor's Children, but my Emperor's Children I like to think as loyalists, survivors of Isfahan 3. I don't want to do any of the transfigured stuff. I'm sure I'll get to it at some point, but right now I don't want to do any of the transfigured stuff. So the last book didn't grab me as much as this book did. In this book there's a bit for everyone, because as well as the lovely lore and the maps, we like maps, it's got black shields, it's got rules for Shattered Legion, it's got rules for Solar Auxilia allies that are allied up with Space Marines. It's got something in for everyone, regardless of whatever legion you collect. One thing more that I want to mention before we get into the meat and potatoes of what's inside this book are the missions. So the previous missions in the Exemplary Battles in the Age of Darkness, the one with Fulgrim transfigured on the front, none of them bit me, none of them caught me and made me want to play it. In this one, there's a campaign that you can play through, but there's also 5 generic missions that you can play, set on Beta-Garmon or set wherever you want, but 5 new basic generic missions, and 2 or 3 of them in there are ones that I do want to play and ones that I want to bring to the channel and figure out. They're all 4 turns long. I have a problem with 4 turn long missions. I mean, if you're going to go and play a game of Horus Heresy, you don't want it to be over in an hour. I don't want it to be over in 2 turns. I want it to last for 10 turns. I want a mission to last a long period of time. I like 6-turn missions. I like playing more Heresy when I play Heresy. And when there are missions that say are 4 turns, then I'm playing less Heresy when I play Heresy. Now, I understand why they've done the 4-turn things, because then you can play it quite quickly. It speeds up the thing. You can play it in an entire evening. But a lot of the 4-turn missions have come off the back of Horus Heresy events. Horus Heresy events typically just play 4-turn missions because then they can squeeze all the missions in a day. And I don't think they need to do that with these supplementary books. Make them 5 turns. Make them variable. Make them 5-6 turns like they are in the main. Let us play as much Heresy as we want to play. Anyways, a bunch of the core missions are pretty good. I will play them. I'll probably expand them out. I'll play them a couple of times at 4 turns just to see what it's like. But you know, maybe it's brilliant at 4 turns, but I like playing 5, 6. I like those last turn games when you get to turn 5 and you think you've lost, and then you roll a dice and then it gets to turn 6 and suddenly you can turn that frown upside down. I like them. Anyway, the core missions in here, good. Then where I want to start with is the Shattered Legions. There's rules for Shattered Legions, which is using 2 or 3. You pick 2 types of legions or 3 types of legions and blur them together in mixed squads. So the classic Shattered Legions would be Iron Hands, Salamanders and Raven Guard together as a unit with an Iron Hand in it, a couple of Salamanders, a couple of Raven Guards together in one unit. But the rules for the Shattered Legions cover all 18 legions, as they should, because, I mean, the Shattered Legions specifically kind of refers to those legions that were shattered on Isfahan 5 and put out of the fight early, but it was a generic term given to many different and disparate types of war bands that ended up forming out there, both on the traitor side and on the loyalist side. Loyalists who stayed traitors, traitors who stayed loyalists, and there's rules for running Shattered Legions in here. It says right off the bat, though, that these are complex rules. It literally says The following rules are more complex than those used by other factions in notifications in publications of Warhammer the Horus Heresy. The first few battles fought with one or more players using these rules will likely progress slower. As such, it's recommended these rules are used for casual games. Don't use them in tournaments. It literally says, don't be a dick. It literally says as well, you might want to make some cheat sheet, a summary of the rules for your selected legions for quick reference, because the Shattered Legion rules are complex. When it says that on page 1 of the Shattered Legion stuff, you know you're in for a roller coaster ride here, because the Horus Heresy rules themselves, they're all over the place. They're more complicated than playing 40k, but they're easier to learn once you've got it down, because the rules aren't changing every balance data slate. The rules are still the rules as they have been for the last 18 months, and the points are still the points as they've been for the last 18 months. We've just got facts and erratas to tidy things up a bit. And in amongst this complex system of rules, to have a page telling you that, hey, it's going to get a bit more complicated with the Shattered Legions, you know you're in for a roller coaster here. And boy, does it get more complicated. How does Shattered Legions work? Well, the best way to tell you is to summarize it as quickly as I can. For each unit that you have in your army, you literally count up which ones are the green guys, which ones are the pink guys, which ones are the black guys, which ones are in this legion, that legion, and that legion. And you have rules for each unit depending on who is in the ascendancy in each unit. So if there are more Iron Hands in a particular unit, then those models are getting Feel No Pains. If there's more Raven Guard in a particular unit, then the first shot that you make out from that unit is precision. These are called the major traits. You have a major trait per unit depending on who is in the majority in that unit. Then you'll get a minor trait per unit depending who's in the minority in the unit. And those minors can be pretty juicy too. And then you get flaws as well. So for example, if you have any salamanders in your unit, you can't sweeping advance, or you can't shoot at units or charge units that are falling back. So some of the flaws are kind of sucky. So you end up with major, minor, and flaws per unit. Having said all this, it is complicated. But once you pull together a Shattered Legion force, if you're only using 2 types of legions, then you only have to remember a major, minor flaw for each of those units. Only a couple, depending on who's in the ascendancy, who is in the majority, who's in the minority. If you use triple legions, and that's the max you can go with this rule set, then it'll get a bit more. But once you've got it down and are playing with your legions, with the major, you'll have it down within a short-ish period of time. There's also hero traits, and the hero traits are rules that you apply to independent characters depending on what legion they're representing. So that's how the Shattered Legions play at the core of it. You ignore the Iron Hands thing, you ignore Emperor's Children +1 initiative on the charge, you ignore Sons of Horus -1 strength, when you ignore all the legion bits that you find in the main rulebook, and instead cobble together a Shattered Legions force, and then find out what their major, minor, and flaw traits are, and what the hero traits of your thing is. And that's how you play the game. And it deliberately says that this is where the skill of playing Shattered Legions comes into an effect. So for example, if you have Iron Hand models in a unit that are in the minority less of other legions, then those Iron Hand models get a 5-up Feel No Pain. You'll take them away in the shooting phase. Then when you shoot back, you make sure that you have salamanders in the ascendancy, the majority of salamanders. So when you fire back with flame, melter, plasma, or volkite weapons, you get +1 to wound. Not +1 strength, but +1 to wound with flame, melter, plasma, or volkite weapons. Essentially pulling away the right models at the right time is part of the tactics of playing the Shattered Legions, so that you've got the right models in a unit in the shooting phase to get those buffs, and the right models in a unit in the fight phase to get those buffs. Blending your units effectively, picking away the right models at the right time so that you're as effective as you can be, is one of the core stratagems here. Stratagems, strategy. The other thing that the Shattered Legions do is their Legion special rule, Legion with bunny ears, end quote, is Legion veteran squads may be selected as troops choices and gain the line unit type. So you can have lots of vets running around all over, vets that score. It's like Pride of the Legion on acid. The last thing to note is independent characters may select upgrades from the armory page of the Legion they're representing. So you can take sides if you're a Death Guard. You can take improvisers for Raven Guard independent characters if you want to. Paragon Blades, things like any of the Legion specific stuff from the armory you can take for your independent characters. You can't take Legion specific units though, such as Palatine Blades or Grave Warden Terminators, but you can definitely take their war gear. Now, is running two separate detachments, one of them an ally, one of them as a main detachment, using the core rules a lot easier? Yes, it is. Will I be doing that going forward? Yes, I will, in many of the games. Will I be trying the Shattered Legion rules as well? Oh, hell yeah. I'll definitely be trying them out, not because they don't sound or feel a lot more powerful than any of the Legion stuff. You do lose a lot of Legion stuff if you do this. All the Legion specific units are gone, for example. And there are some very strong Legion specific traits. Iron Hands, anyone? That are very strong and that are good to use, particularly if you're using that particular Legion. And suddenly if you're running Shattered Legion's Iron Hand, you're losing that particular ability that they have, the -1 strength when they all get shot at. So there's definitely swings and roundabouts. There's definitely positives and negatives for running the Shattered Legion. The rules are definitely overly complex, which is exactly what you'd want from Horus Heresy, to be fair. And this is from someone who normally complains about overly complex rules. Simplicity is my jam. But in this, because it's Heresy and because these rules aren't going to change 6 months down the line or with a balanced data slate, once these rules are in place, these rules are in place. I'm going to be trying them out. I'm going to be trying out a couple of little things, mixing some units together and seeing if I can make a Shattered Legion list which does the Shattered Legions proud. But the Shattered Legions part of this book isn't the best bit. The best bit of this book is the Black Shields. There's rules for Black Shields, those that have scoured their armor of any Legion affiliation whatsoever and fought for either the Warmaster, either the Warmaster or the Emperor of mankind. So the Black Shield section of this book is Games Workshop saying, what do you want to do? It's a complete chocolate box and you can build a force in however you want to build a force, essentially. It's very, very open. Black Shields count as loyalists or traitors, no matter who they're fighting against. So that's something for your opponent to know, because your opponent will have rules that kick in. If you're fighting traitors, you get hatred, or if you're fighting loyalists, you get preferred enemy. They might have some rules like that. Black Shields always count as loyalists and traitors for the purposes of those rules. Black Shields, if they're taken as allies, can never score their distrusted allies. So you can bring along a detachment in an allied slot, but it won't score. Black Shields as well have their own advanced reaction. And basically it's very specific and you might not pull it off all the time. It's when your unit of Black Shields are charged. When they get charged, if the charging unit has a Master of the Legion, the Warlord in it, a unique character, a Primarch, unique subtypes, those things, named people that we've all read about in the books. If they get charged by one of those units, they become fearless and they get extra attacks. So very specific set of rules, set of circumstances for you to do. However, your Primarch or the enemy, for example, Master of Legion, Praetor with some dudes goes charging into a big squad of 20 tactical marines. You can say, well, these tactical marines are now doing the Black Shield's advanced reaction, which is no lords, no masters. I'm now fearless. And that Praetor and that command squad is suddenly gummed up by 20 tactical marines. Yes, the Praetor and the command squad that he's charging in there are going to slowly make their way through that legion of tactical marines, but they might be stuck there for a turn or two. So it's a very specific advanced reaction, but I can see some juice coming out of it. They also have their own warlord traits, of which there's 3 of them, and then they have oaths. So instead of Legion-specific rules, like the Iron Hands ones, the Salamanders ones, you have to pick 2 oaths of vengeance and Wrath. A couple of these oaths you can pick twice. So, for example, the very first one is called the Eternal Vendetta. And you can pick this because you've got to pick 2 oaths out of the 15 or so oaths in here. But you could pick this twice because the Eternal Vendetta gives you +1 to hit on all hit rolls in melee against Legion X. So you put your models down on the table, you're fighting Emperor's Children today, and you can have the Eternal Vendetta Emperor's Children, which means in melee against the Emperor's Children, +1 to hit. That's huge. Most tactical marines are going to be hitting Primarchs on 4s, not the weapon skill 8 ones, but the weapon skill less than 8 ones. They're going to be hitting Primarchs on 4s. Most tacticals are going to be competing with weapon skill 5 units, your elite units, and then your elite units, your weapon skill 5 units, are going to be hitting a lot of stuff on 3s. That's in melee all the time. And the reason why you can pick it twice is because you can go the Eternal Vendetta Emperor's Children, and you can pick Oath, the Eternal Vendetta World Eaters. You can pick a second legion. You can pick 2 legions, but you're getting +1 to hit those legions in melee. The downside is if you're within 12, you have to try and charge them, but it's still very strong, isn't it? I mean, you're going to be building an army around melee that wants to get into close combat, that wants to take advantage of that +1 to hit. So in most cases, you're not going to be that sad about charging in there or having to make a charge within 12 inches if you can make a charge within 12 inches. The Space Wolves have got something like this when a howl goes up, but there's ways around it. For example, if you've got a unit of tactical marines and in front of them are 10 Terminators with a Herald and a Praetor and a Primaris Apothecary, and you really don't want to go charging in there, then your 10 tactical marines shoot somewhere else. They shoot over to the right, or they shoot at the unit behind, because then those 10 tactical marines won't be allowed to charge that unit within 12 of them right in front of them because they didn't shoot at it. So there are ways around it. But Oath of Eternal Vendetta +1 to hit against the thing that you have an Eternal Vendetta against, beautiful. And there's plenty of oaths in this book which give you plenty of ideas about how you can play the game. There's an oath in here which basically you don't bring a warlord. In disgrace, all are equal. A detachment with this oath is not permitted to include any HQ choices, but it is not required to select a compulsory HQ choice and may not include a warlord. Brilliant. However, all models in the detachment with the character unit subtype gain +1 leadership, +1 wound. So all your sergeants are suddenly going up to 2 wounds. Your Terminator sergeants are going up to 3 wounds. A Consul has 2 wounds. A Praetor has 3 wounds. But yeah, +1 leadership for all your characters, +1 wound for all your characters. Drop a HQ. You can't take any. You're never going to lose the Slay the Warlord secondary because you don't have a Warlord. And for every single one of your characters, you add one of the following characteristics to their data sheet, to their character. Basically, you can give them an increased weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, or initiative. So you could make all your sergeants 2 wounds, Terminator sergeants 3 wounds. You can make all your sergeants +1 weapon skill or +1 initiative, and you just lose the Warlord. Like many oaths, it has a downside as well. All the models in the detachment that are not a character have -1 leadership. So instead of leadership 7-8 in a tactical squad, you'll have a leadership 6-9 in a tactical squad. You're really not going to want snipers. But that oath is no HQ. How about no troops? Our pride is our armor oath. Any Legion veteran squads in either primary detachment or an allied detachment with this oath may be upgraded by 50 points to gain the line. So Legion veteran squads gain line for 50 points. Shad Legions do that for free, but they gain line and they also gain Heart of the Legion and Fury of the Legion, and a detachment with this oath may not include troop choices, and all troop slots are removed from Force Org. You could take the oath, which is no HQ. You could take the other oath, Pride is our armor, no troops, and you can literally have an army of veterans running around with line, that score, with Heart of the Legion, Fury of the Legion, and chuck in some fasts and some heavies, and you're done. This is why I said that I feel that this has got such a chocolate box to it. I mean, you're basically throwing away HQs and troops and bringing a whole squad of vets. It's such a chocolate box. Imagine the hobbying possibilities and the narrative possibilities as you pull together your warband like that. You have an oath, the legacy of Nikeah. You like Psychers and you're not a Thousand Sun, and you're one of the Psychers in the other legions that were told to stop Psychering. Well, basically all your characters can be made Psychers, just like Thousand Suns can. They're not as good as the Thousand Suns, but they're still pretty good. Or how about the Flesh is Weak? I wonder what legion they had in mind when they came up with that oath. Basically, all infantry and cavalry units gain the automata unit type and have a 5-up feel no pain. What? That means your Terminators, for example, just have a free 5-up feel no pain, and they gain the automata type. For those that don't know, the automata type makes them fearless, reroll poisoned and fleshbane against them, makes them immune to instant death. Instead, they take D3 wounds rather than just 1 wound from instant death. These are for people, the Flesh is Weak, and cavalry units, for example. So your bikes have a feel no pain, or the javelin speeders, which are toughness 6 with 4 wounds floating around all over the place, will gain the automata type because they're cavalry and a 5-up feel no pain. The downside is pretty big, which is if there's any enemies in line of sight and range, you have to shoot them, and you have to shoot at the closest thing. If you've got weapons that won't wound the closest thing because you're a tactical squad firing at a Spartan, for example, you don't have to shoot at it. So there's some big downsides to some of the big upsides for some of these oaths. Or the spoils of victory. Your Black Shield warband haven't got any kit. Haven't got any kit at all, and they need to pick up as much kit and firearms and ammunition and mastercrafted weapons left around on the battle grid, so a unit that includes any models with this oath may not make sweeping advances. However, whenever such a unit is eligible to make a sweeping advance, roll a dice, and on a 4-up you gain a victory point. There are 12 oaths in here, so that's many different possible combinations for building your Black Shield's warband, and they're a lot more accessible than doing the Shattered Legion stuff, which is why it stands out for me. They've got their own warlord traits, they've got their own advanced reaction, and just I read it and read through the oaths and was like, oh, I'm going to need to build a Black Shield's warband now. I think I'll just start off with a unit of vets with line for 50 points, and Heart of the Legion, Fury of the Legion, and load them up. And that's an allied detachment right there. They won't score or anything, so the line thing is kind of a waste. But, you know, it says you may give them the line for plus 50 points, so I wouldn't bother spending that on them originally. I just bring them along without any troops and a HQ. You could bring the Oath without a HQ and the Oath without any troops, and then your other detachment is literally one squad of Black Shield veterans running around with your army. Who wouldn't want to add that? I want to add that. So I read that and thought, yep, there's some gold in them there hills. I like it. And then the last thing in this book is Solar Auxilia allies. So in the main Imperium Black Book for Solar Auxilia, it gives you all the rules for running Solar Auxilia, and you can run Solar Auxilia as allies if you want to, or you can run them on their own. And then you get the Legion cohort stuff, depending on whether they've got a Legate Marshal in there. If they have a Legate Marshal, it unlocks the Legion cohort stuff, and that's how you play Solar Auxilia. In here, you get to keep all of those things, but if you run them as an allied slot with Space Marines, then depending on the Space Marine chapter that you're running with, you get extra rules for your Solar Auxilia. So, for example, if you are allied to the Iron Hand, you'd have Cerebral Augments when a unit complies of models with Legion Auxilia. Iron Hand special rule fails a morale check owing to casualties in the shooting phase. You don't fall back. You just suffer D3 wounds. Your big blobs aren't going anywhere. Or what about Sons of Horus? When a friendly unit containing one or more models with Legion Astartes Sons of Horus charges an enemy unit, and your Solar Auxilia killed one or two models in that unit, just killed a model in that unit, then the Sons of Horus add 2 to the result of the charge distance. The Auxilia shoot at unit first, then the Sons of Horus get a charge. Or Blood Angels, any model with a Legion Auxilia Blood Angel special rule which is locked in combat increases its attacks by 1, so long as they're within 6 inches of a Blood Angel. They're essentially free rules. If you're bringing along Solar Auxilia allies to a legionary force, then you want this book, because they're giving you free rules, free upgrades to your Solar Auxilia, or to your legionary forces, because some of the rules affect the Auxilia, some of the rules affect the Legion, depending on what Legion you're playing with. There's 18 legions, so there's a lot of rules, and yes, there's even ones for the Night Lords. 12 pages of rules. Are they 12 pages of rules that they could have put in the Imperium book where the Solar Auxilia lived? Yes, they could have put them in there where the Solar Auxilia lived, but they're in this book now. I feel like it's been added on later, and perhaps because they're selling lots of Solar Auxilia plastic models and like, hey, look at all this new plastic model range that we're releasing. Don't you want some of them? I know you do. Well, if you buy some of them and this book as well, here's what they get extra on top of just the stuff they normally do. It's a nice little touch. I didn't expect to see it in here, and speaking as someone who will be adding Solar Auxilia bit by bit in the future and wants to add some Solar Auxilia to one army and some definitely to the Raven Guard. I need to add some to the Raven Guard. In here, Solar Auxilia get +1 leadership if they're part of an allied detachment with Raven Guard, and then there's a Raven Guard Rite of War which makes your Solar Auxilia stubborn. So you pick the Raven Guard Rite of War and suddenly you're stubborn leadership 8, Solar Auxilia everywhere. You've got a command vox going off with your Legate Marshal. Suddenly your whole stubborn leadership 10 is nice. What I'm saying is I'm getting Solar Auxilia. This part got me thinking as well about which particular Solar Auxilia factions am I going to be adding to which particular legion to make which particular rules sing, or just to see what they do on the tabletop. So that's the Solar Auxilia section. That's kind of how Shattered Legions works. That's kind of how Black Shields work. That's what's in this book. And all the chunk of lore. Then at the end, there's some new stuff. We've got the Hermes Light Sentinel Squadron for the Solar Auxilia coming. And the Hermes Valataris Squadron, which is the heavier Sentinel. The Light Sentinel is Toughness 5 with 2 wounds and a 4-up save. The heavier Sentinel is Toughness 5 with 2 wounds and a 3-up save. And the light one's fast. The heavier one is an elite slot. I'm so pleased it's not in the heavy slot, which is something that the Solar Auxilia struggle with because there's so many good heavy choices to take. And there is a new Rite of War just for these light sentinels as they're coming along. It's called Reconnaissance Pattern Cohorts, and you can take Solar Auxilia Hermes Light Sentinel Squadrons as troop choices, and they gain line. So there is a Rite of War to run around loads of these light sentinels all over the place with line. Brilliant. Add in your tanks, add in your bombards. You don't have to have 1 foot infantry at all. Imagine what a 3,000 point list would look like. It'd probably be terrible on the battle grid because Hermes Light Sentinels can't fight at all. They're 18 points a pop, but if you put the grenade launcher in there, and you're gonna put the grenade launcher in there, they're 23 points a pop for a toughness 5, 4-up save, 2 wound thing. They're gonna die fairly quickly. But having 6 units of them running around all over the place, and they can come in up to 6 strong. I say normally they come in units of up to 6 strong. If you're taking them as a normal fast attack choice, you can't take more than 6 in a unit. But if you take the Reconnaissance Pattern Cohort Rite of War, you can take Hermes Light Sentinels in units of up to 10. So you could have 60 of these things running around all over the place as your troops line stuff behind a wall of tanks and artillery. It would look super cool. It would probably suck, but it would look super cool. It'd probably be very, very expensive to put together as well. But I love the fact that the rules are in here for them. There's also rules for lots of new models as well. Lots of the stuff that they released recently. So the Endred Har model is in here. The Either or the Or is in here. Tibot Mar, was he the Either or the Or? I think he was the Or. You've got Horus Axamand in here. A lot of the new models that they've been releasing on warhammercommunity.com that we've seen come out over the last 6 months, the rules for them are inside this book. that's the core of the book, but there's still a few other little bits in here. I mean, there's rules for Hibu Khan, there's rules for Shadrach Medusan, which has been improved from his Legends choice. Shadrach's looking quite nice. There's rules as well for like a Lieutenant HQ choice. He's a Legion Opte for 40 points. He's like a veteran Sarge or a veteran, like that you can bring as your HQ if you don't want a Master of the Legions, or if you don't want a Consul, if instead of bringing along a Chaplain or a Master of Signal or one of them for 40 points, you can bring a Legion Opte along, which is basically a sergeant with 2 wounds. He's got a weapon skill of 5 though, a veteran sergeant with 2 wounds who's in charge of your entire force. And then there is a Legion Company Command Squad, not to be confused with the Company Command Squad. The Company Command Squad that you get in the main rulebook is a retinue choice for a Praetor. The Legion Company Command Squad in this can't take Terminator armor or anything. It's just got normal 3-up save. It can come in a unit of up to 10, but it is a Legion Company Command Squad that you can attach to things that aren't Praetors, such as your Chaplain or your Opaque Marshal or your Master of Signals or whatever. There's another command squad in it. There's loads of little bits in this book that have been tacked on and added in, which help everyone who play Horus Heresy, or which are interesting to everyone who plays Heresy, whereas the other exemplary battles in the Age of Darkness was very specific. This one, the broader brush, I much like the broader brush. There's something in here for everyone. And out of the 3 books they released, Siege of Chthoniya, exemplary battles in the Age of Darkness, and this is the first one that I picked up and read through and said, yep, I like this. I want to play these missions. I want to add a couple of these units. I'm interested to see how that looks like on the tabletop. I'm interested of running a Shattered Legions a few times and seeing how we get on with it, whether it breaks my tiny brain or whether it just clicks into place like the rest of the Horus Heresy rule set does, and I'm flying with it, and maybe Shattered Legions is something that I lean into. Definitely going to be leading into the Black Shields at some point. It's just on top of all the other painting and all the other projects that I have for the Heresy right now, do I cut into that just to have a nice unit of 10 vets that I mod up, give them all the toys, all the juice, and they'll be stupid expensive, and they won't score unless I bring them on their own as a primary detachment. And then the secondary are distrusted allies, and they never score. And then the secondary you build up with things that don't score any. There's ideas, you see. I read this book and I've got lots of ideas, and I think if you're a Horus Heresy player, then you probably want this book too, because it just puts a lot of meat on them bones. So well done, Games Workshop, on this one. More like this one, please. Hope you enjoyed that battle. And no, it's not about report. Happy wargaming.